Jokkers van Degamingninja, welkom bij een nieuwe video en wij gaan weer bij een random donderdag iets spelen. En dit is de Stanley Parable. Best vreemde game vind ik. Het is heel erg anders vergeleken andere games. Ik heb niet veel ervan gespeeld. Ik weet wel dat er heel veel eindingen zijn, maar ja, laten we gewoon even spelen.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on the keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day, every month, every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office. The meeting room, yes, that's where everyone would be. Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room, and from then on, he would never be alone ever again.
Ik heb wel eens wat eerder gespeeld, even te kijken hoe dat leuk is of niet voor een random donderdag. Maar wat is dit? Ik heb het nog nooit gezien.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Als ik rechts ga. Ik heb altijd eigenlijk geluisterd naar de narrator. Wat als ik gewoon niet
This was
luister?
not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. Ah, yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautiful. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Ik moest alleen maar op een computer knopjes drukken. What do you mean?
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not... But in his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
Nu is er weer geen papieren.
A soft wind blew outside and perhaps rain started. And if it did, it stopped shortly after. Stanley hoped that he would one day see weather.
Hier oplopen. Kan ik hier niet oplopen? Kan ik... Oh. Met de hoofd, met de bukkel zo. Kan ik hierin? Kan ik hier... Wait, what? Heb ik de game gebroken? Is dit de bedoeling?
At first, Stanley assumed he'd broken the map, until he heard this narration and realized it was part of the game's design all along.
Waarom? Dit
He then praised the game for its insightful and witty commentary into the nature of video game structure and its examination of structural narrative tropes. So, now that you're here, what do you think? Isn't this a fun and unique place to be?
Nee!
Why don't we take a minute just to drink it all in? Okay, I'm over it now.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are you sick of this gag yet?
Ja.
Well, I don't know how to say this politely, but you could literally just hit escape and restart the game any old time you want.
Oké, fine. Waar ben ik nu? Wat is er gebeurd?
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Ik heb dit nog nooit gezien. Wat is dit? Wacht, wat?
Stanley went around touching every little... When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Fine, ik moet luisteren. Wat was daar nou aan het begin?
Yet there was not a single person here either.
Fired,
Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Alsof het moest met oh mijn god. Waarom heb ik geen schaduw? Sure, everything is good. Oké. What do people want? Grass about things plus money. We have our new product. Profits. What is hot? Target demographic. Teenagers. Stripes. Hoe is dit bedrijf nog niet failliet? Wacht, kan ik hierop staan? Kom op. Laat maar in. Laat maar op. Kan ik op de tafel staan? I guess not.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Laten we kijken naar beneden. Wat gebeurt er? Wat is dit? Wacht. Is dat de knop? En dat is een lamp gewoon. Stop. Gewoon op dozen. Wat is hier? Een auto? Kan ik in de auto? Kan ik weg?
Couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours.
Ja,
He might be
precies.
fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy.
What?
And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense.
Where's the auto?
And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went?
Nee.
And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar.
Yeah.
Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Nee,
Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking?
Ja, heb ik een
Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life.
Sla jezelf.
Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself.
Ja.
I'm through with this dream.
Ik kan het
I
slapen
wish
of
it to
niet.
be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine.
Maar jij bent mijn gedachten aan het zeggen terwijl...
I am okay.
Oké. Laat maar uit. Wacht. Waar ben ik?
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Ben ik gek geworden?
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Ooit hoor.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Oh mijn god. Wat is er mis met jou? Je belt gewoon een ambulance.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Nee.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Weet je wat, ik ga een keer luisteren. Misschien is deze stem in mijn hoofd wat heus niet een van de
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Hoping he'd coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Doen wat ik wil. Ik wil een bathroom. Ik wil een gouden wc hebben.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845.
Oh.
But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
2845. Kom op, ver.
Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Wat is dit? Wat gebeurt er? Oké.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Is dit eigenlijk een horror game?
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Escape. Mind control. Ik wil niet mind controlled worden, maar escape.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
Ja, oké. Als escape van het leven.
The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
Het is alsof deze tunnel oneindig is. Oh nee. Wat is hier verder? Is het een oneindige tunnel? Please zeg wel dat dit niet zo is. Nee, volgens mij niet.
At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Yay, lekkere glijbaan. Zie je water onder? Kan ik dit emoji wateren? Ja, Minecraft. Waar ben ik?
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his
Alsjeblieft, laat me
he
los.
reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever.
Laat me los.
Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this world is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. So he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
Nee. Mijn leven?
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
Heb ik het uitgespeeld?
And yet it would be just a few minutes before Stanley would restart the game, back in his office, as alive as ever. What exactly did the narrator think he was going to accomplish?
Ja, wat is dit?
When every path you can walk has been created for you long in advance, death becomes meaningless, making life the same. Do you see now? Do you see that Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start?
Het is eigenlijk best raar als dit het leven was. De credits, heb ik het niet uitgespeeld? Dat is cool. Waar ben ik? Dat is even zo cool. Oh, ik wil een freedom ending hebben. Hoe krijg ik dat? Ik wil een freedom ending. Hoe werkt die? Countdown room. Oh, dat is cool. Wauw. Oké, weet je wat? Ik weet niet dat ik de freedom ending zal krijgen. Maar misschien is het vrijheid als ik alles doe wat de narrator niet zegt. Dat ik alles...
Stanley knew the office layout like the back of his hand. It was only a matter of time before he found the others, wherever they were.
Alsof je buiten gaat.
Just a matter of time.
Naar buiten gaat. Of je juist het verhaal verder gaat. Ik denk dat ik nog voor deze video nog één ending doe.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Wat is de freedom ending?
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music.
Is het copyright? Ik bedoel niet dat ik foto's ben onecht. Ik word toch niet gewoond.
Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Het is helemaal anders als nee.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Ik dat het anders gaat. Camera? I don't like this. Een lamp.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
What is this?
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen. And Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Onze privéleven, het is gewoon onze... Weet je, als Facebook deed, onze persoonlijke gegevens verkopen. Wat
This
is
mind
dit?
control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
Wat is dit?
No, he refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never! It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Onderdrukt. Maar ik wil de freedom ending. Gewoon, dat lijkt me wel het coolste. Omdat ik dat heb gezien. En ik denk dat als ik de mind control uitdoe, dat juist zorgt dat ik niet. Als ik het uitdoe, dan krijg ik freedom waarschijnlijk. En dan heb ik vrijheid waarschijnlijk. Want als ik word mind control, dan heb ik geen vrijheid. Is dit goed? Wat gebeurt er? Wat is dit? Wat is dit?
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes! He had won! He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do.
Och, maar hoe krijg ik geld?
Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing.
Wat een prachtig.
Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Hey, the achievement beat the game. Zie, ik heb nog nooit het uitgespeeld, zeg maar. Maar dat was het voor vandaag. We hebben echt veel te veel gespeeld. Dus als je dit leuk vindt, dan geef een like. Als je meer wilt zien, dan abonneer naar mijn content. Ik doe dit soort dingen en nog meer. Hier ga ik waarschijnlijk geen serie op doen, want ik bedoel, het is niet echt een game waar je een serie van kan maken. Maar abonneer als je het leuk vindt en meer wilt zien. Oh mijn god. Like als je het leuk vindt, abonneer als je meer wilt zien. En het enige wat ik wil zeggen is, later!